Okay, we're going to start by looking at the primary air and wood modes of the guitar. So if we come here, we see that the pickup is recognizing a lot less spectral information than the microphone. Um, we can also see that on the microphone we have a fairly healthy air and wood mode, the air mode being around 80 hertz and the wood mode being around 160 hertz. And we also can see that the primary wood mode has a slightly larger amplitude than the primary air mode. Not a huge difference, but it is noticeable. But if we come down to the pickup, we can see that the primary wood mode is much, much more pronounced than the primary air mode. The primary air mode is virtually non-existent when compared to the primary wood mode. So what we're seeing here is that the microphone is much better at picking up the frequencies associated with body resonance than the pickup is. So now we're going to look at the high E string. So we're going to start by looking at the microphone spectra. So we see here that we have a strong fundamental between 220 hertz and 470 hertz, almost directly in the middle. And then we've got fairly strong harmonics, and they're kind of doing this cascading shape, which is nice. We're going to ignore pretty much everything past 2000 hertz just because it kind of descends into no man's land white noise territory. But you can see this is a fairly standard looking spectrum. But it's interesting when we come down and look at the pickup. We can see here that the second harmonic, or that octave above the high E, is actually stronger than the fundamentals. So this means that the pickup is recognizing that second harmonic more easily than it is the fundamental. Also, we get an interesting dip right at around 1300 hertz, whereas on the microphone we're getting a similar trough here at 1300 hertz, but it's extremely pronounced on the pickup. And then we see a large decrease in the amplitude of the harmonics, the fourth and the fifth and the sixth harmonic. So we're noticing that it seems at 1300 hertz the pickup just can't seem to process that information as well as the microphone. But let's move on to the B string. Okay, so now we're looking at the B string of the guitar. And we can see if we look at the microphone spectra, again we're seeing a very strong fundamental. We're also getting some of the primary air mode sounding here again at around 80 hertz. And we're seeing a similar pattern with this cascading effect. That being said, the second and fourth harmonic are quite resonant, quite present here on the microphone spectrum, more so than the third one, which is interesting. But again, if we come down here to the pickup, we can see that it is a slight difference, but the second harmonic is more easily recognized by the pickup than the fundamental, if just slightly. We're also noticing around 80 hertz that we're not getting any of the primary air mode. We're seeing maybe a little bit of primary wood mode around here. But again, a stronger second harmonic than fundamental. And we're seeing that fourth harmonic is much, much quieter than all of the others. Again, the fourth harmonic on the microphone seems to be quite strong, but the pickup, it seems as soon as we hit that 1000 hertz mark, it seems to be dropping some of the information. So moving on to the G string, we're starting to see a pattern in the pickup versus the microphone. So if we come and we start down at the pickup this time, again we're seeing that the second harmonic is stronger than the fundamental. We're also seeing the same effect take place on the fourth harmonic, where its amplitude is much, much lower than that of the other harmonics. And again, if we come up to the microphone, we're seeing we're having a strong fundamental. We're still getting that primary air mode sounding and being recognized by the microphone. We have a much weaker second harmonic than all of the previous. We're getting a similar cascading effect, but the thing that I'm starting to notice between the pickup and the microphone is that the microphone is much more easily able to recognize the fundamental, whereas the pickup, seems to be recognizing the second harmonic much easier than the fundamental, which is definitely going to affect the timbre of the guitar and the sound that is translated via the pickup versus the microphone. Now we're going to take a look at the D string. The D string, we're starting to notice a similar pattern, but it looks like the microphone is less able to recognize all of the harmonics of the fundamental of the D string than it previously has. Usually the microphone has been readily able to recognize all of the different harmonic series that is attached to a specific string, but we're seeing kind of a struggle here with a very, very strong fundamental and much weaker harmonics. All of the harmonics seem to have generally the same amplitude, but the fundamental is much more present. But if we come down to the pickup, we're starting to see kind of an inversion of our expectations here. We're seeing a strong fundamental and stronger harmonics than we've seen previously. Now, we are still seeing a weak fourth harmonic. For whatever reason, the guitar pickup does not seem to want to recognize that harmonic. We're kind of seeing a scoop at where our primary air mode usually would be. But the pickup seems to be doing a better job at recognizing the D string than it has done all the other strings. We're getting a more typical looking spectrograph that usually would probably, by looking at all the other strings, would be associated with the microphone. But we're starting to see some different things as we start to shift into the lower register of the instrument. Okay, moving on to the second to last string, the A string, we're starting to see something completely different. These two spectra look almost identical. Obviously, there's a difference in output between the pickup and the microphone, but the shape of these two spectra are virtually the same. We're seeing strong fundamentals. We're seeing slightly stronger harmonics on the pickup than the microphone, but they're generally very, very close. We're also seeing the same sort of thing where the fourth harmonic is weaker on the pickup, but again, not by much, not as drastic as it used to be. And we're seeing that the fifth harmonic, around 500 hertz on the microphone, is much weaker. But this is probably the closest that we've seen these two spectra look extremely similar, which is interesting. So we are kind of seeing a pattern between the higher strings of the guitar and the lower strings of the guitar, and it looks like the pickup is having an easier time recognizing the lower strings than it did with the high strings. Okay, so now we're going to look at our final string, the low E string, and something that I'm noticing between these two different spectrograms is that they look very, very similar. This is one of the first times, well, not one of the first times, but they look very, very similar. So we can see here on both of them we have a little bit of a weaker fundamental, actually. So the fundamental E at around 82 hertz is what generally is E2, is a lot weaker than the second and third harmonic. So we're seeing a much, much stronger third harmonic on both spectrographs, actually. Again, that fourth harmonic is weaker, but it's much, much weaker on the microphone than it is on the pickup.